Will the housing market finally start to shift here in 2025? Many of the articles that I'm reading and the headlines out there talk about how slow the housing market is. We're going to take a look at an article out of Redfin talking about how the days on market right now, the median days on market is the slowest that we've seen since 2019, meaning that homes, the pace of home sales is starting to retract back to 2019 levels. Now, that may sound great, and it is great. It is positive news for the housing market. And I would agree that, yes, the housing market is slowing a little bit year over year. But when we take a look at the graphs and we take a look at the trends across the country, specifically the inventory out there in the market, we'll see that things are shifting, but they're shifting slowly. And I don't think it's going to be enough to cause any significant change as we move through 2025. Now, that's bearing any change in interest rates. Of course, if rates shoot up again, then yes, we could see the housing market slow even further. But if rates come down, we could see more buyers come into the market as things become more affordable. Remember, what's causing the housing market to be so slow right now and so slow last year is high mortgage rates combined with a ever increasing median sales price. And I think that's going to continue as we move throughout 2025. We might not see the median sales price increase drastically across the country, but we are likely to see it tick up, at least in most areas across the country. Now, that being said, there is no national housing market in the United States. Housing markets across the country are very localized, and what's happening in Texas is very different than what's happening where I am here in Vermont or what you may be experiencing in California. These markets behave differently and they're not necessarily related to each other. We are seeing home price declines in markets around Texas and in Florida. So, what I think is going to happen as we move throughout 2025 is more of the same. Yes, those markets will see more price declines. Really, markets that have more inventory, specifically more inventory than 2019 levels, will see the largest price declines as we move throughout 2025. Markets where inventory is still well below 2019 levels, we're likely to see the median sales price continue to increase. And when we take a look at how many markets are short on inventory, how many markets have less inventory today than they had in 2019, we'll see that across the country, median sales price is not likely to fall. We just do not have the inventory to bring home prices down. So even though this market is slow and we're at sort of a standstill between home buyers and sellers, we're likely not going to experience anything different unless we see a drastic change in interest rates in one way or the other. So I'm going to show you the data that I am looking at to draw these conclusions so you can make your own opinion about what's going on in the housing market. But before I do, my name is Liam O'Reilly. I'm a realtor in Vermont with Jerry Riley Real Estate. If you have any real estate needs, feel free to reach out to me directly. All of my contact information is in the description. I'm happy to help you directly if you're here in Vermont, or I'm happy to find you a great agent in another market if you're looking somewhere else. So let's dive into the articles here. Okay, we're going to start here with this little paragraph out of a Fast Company article. And it says, while home prices are falling in some areas around the Gulf, most regional housing markets are still seeing positive year over year home price growth. The big question going forward is whether active inventory and months of supply will continue to rise and cause more housing markets to see outright price declines. And my bet is no, at least not for most of the country. Sure, we might see more markets increase their inventory to above 2019 levels, but it's not going to be enough to bring the median sales price down, at least not down drastically across the country. Now, when we take a look at Redfin, if we see the article here, and I know my face cuts out the top part of this article, but it says the typical home is taking nearly 2 months to sell. That's the slowest pace in 5 years. So that's what they're talking about. The housing market is very slow right now. But when we take a look at the graphs, and specifically with the graph relating to the title of this article, and we take a look at the median days on market, we see here homes sold in a median of 54 days, which we can see is well above 2023, well above 2024, a significant increase from last year where they were probably around 49 days last year. Now we're at 54. So yes, it is much higher. It's the highest that we've seen since February of 2019, but this is also the slowest time of year for real estate. And when we look at these other graphs in this article, you'll see the same thing. Yes, things are a little bit worse this year in terms of being a seller's market, and a little bit worse for home prices, which I know makes a lot of people happy out there, which is, it's completely fine either way. We're just reporting on what's actually going on. The important thing to keep in mind is this 55-day number is not likely to last. Of course, we'll be tracking it throughout the months to see what is happening in the housing market. And if this days on market continues to skyrocket, deviates from the trend that we saw over the past 3 years. But what's most likely to happen is we're going to see days on market increase even further from where we are today. And then we're going to see it flatten out and start to drop as we move into the spring and summer buying months. This is just what happens in the housing market. The spring and the summertime, they're busier. People buy more homes around that time. It's easier to move. If you have a family, you don't have to take your kids out of school if you're moving in the summer. So that's why we see days on market drop as we move into the spring and summer. And we're likely to see the same thing this year. Now, when we take a look at the other trends, we see roughly the same thing, right? Median sales price, again, behaving similarly to what we saw in years past. I do think it's likely that we'll see it start to tick back up as we move into the spring and summer, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it stay relatively flat or even trend down slightly this year. I don't think we're going back to 2022 levels, or certainly not back to 2019 levels in price, but we're likely to remain flat, maybe slightly up, maybe slightly down. Now, when we take a look at median asking price, we see it shoots way up, but that's not atypical, right? It shot way up in 2022, not so much in 2023, but it did shoot way up in 2024, and then it flattened out. So we're likely to see this median asking price start to flatten out as sellers come to the realization that they can't just ask for any number when selling their home, and that starts to adjust as more inventory hits the market again in that spring buying season. Most of these graphs tell a similar story. When we take a look at pending sales, we can see they're down 9% year over year, 9.4% actually, which is very significant. There's fewer homes that are being put under contract this year than there were last year, than there were in 2023, and certainly fewer homes than what we saw in 2022. But that being said, it's on a similar trend to what we saw last year and what we saw in 2023. And again, it's not significantly below 9%. Yes, that is pretty significant. But when we take a look at these numbers and see what that actually means in the grand scheme of the housing market, it's not too far below what we've seen in years past. And that's why I'm saying I'm expecting a similar housing market here in 2025 as the housing markets that we saw in 2023 and in 2024 when rates were high. That's why I'm not expecting home prices to crash. Of course, we have more leverage than what we had back in 2022 and 2021 when the market was crazy, but we're not going to shoot into an insane buyer's market. Things are likely going to remain how they are today, where yes, buyers do have more leverage, but it's not going to be anything like it was in 2008. We simply don't have that inventory. Similar story here with new listings of new homes. Again, we're seeing it start to peak up here. Now, active listings, this is kind of interesting because we're seeing an increase in new listings that are hitting the market, right? New listings are up 2.2% year over year. Active listings, yes, they're up year over year, but they're still trending down. So what this is telling me is that some sellers aren't selling their homes, right? We have fewer homes going under contract. We have more homes hitting the market, but we have less active listings. And so what I think that is people taking their home off the market and they're going to try again when spring rolls around and the weather gets a little bit warmer across the country. Again, same story here with 5.2 months of supply. Yes, we're up year over year, 0.3 months higher than we were this time last year. But again, we're likely to follow the same trend when as we move through February, as we get into March, the month supply is likely to come back down. Again, we're in a very similar market to what we experienced last year, and that's likely to continue throughout 2025. Now, when we hop back over to this Fast Company article, we can see here. So they said that home prices are dropping in areas around the Gulf. When we take a look at states that have more inventory for sale now than they had in 2019, we see here Texas, again, around the Gulf, Florida around the Gulf, more inventory this year in 2025 than what we saw in 2019. Colorado as well, a little bit more inventory, but most of the country, the other 47 states across the country have less inventory on the market. When we take a look at Connecticut, 80% less inventory than what we saw in 2019. Now it's up 3.3% year over year, but it's still down significantly from pre-pandemic levels. And that's what's causing home prices to remain high. That's what's causing the housing market to remain stale, right? If we saw 2019 levels of inventory across the country, we would see price declines just like they're seeing in Texas, just like they're seeing in Florida. There's more inventory on the market than there are buyers out there. But as long as there's less inventory than 2019, specifically significantly less inventory. Most of these states are down 20%, 10% from 2019 levels. Many of them, Vermont here, down almost 70%. Delaware down almost 50%. So many of these states, many of these markets across the country are undersupplied with inventory, and that's what's keeping the median sales price up. This is really an inventory story when it comes to the housing market. Now, they say here at the end, which I completely agree with, generally speaking, local housing markets where active inventory has returned to pre-pandemic levels have experienced softer home price growth or outright declines over the past 3 years. Conversely, local housing markets where active inventory remains far below pre-pandemic levels have, generally speaking, experienced stronger home price growth over the past 3 years. So to wrap this video up, yes, the housing market is changing, and it's slightly slower than what we saw last year. It's slightly slower than what we saw in 2023, but we're not seeing significant changes on a national basis to the US housing market. We're likely to see a very similar market to what we saw last year in 2024. Buyers are likely to have a little bit more leverage this year because things are just slightly better for buyers, but we're not going to see home prices crash across the country. We just don't have the inventory for it. And all of the graphs, all of the data that I've shown you in this video here, at least to me, when I look at that, I see this is, okay, we're on a similar trend to what happened in 2023, to what happened in 2024. Why would we expect something different in 2025? Again, unless there's a black swan event, unless we see some major change with rates, we're likely to see this tight, sluggish, balanced housing market where there aren't enough home buyers out there to make home prices go up because buyers are having a hard time affording homes right now. And there's not enough inventory out there to make home prices go down because there's still enough buyers who want to purchase the limited inventory on the market. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. I will be sure to get back to you, and I'll see you in the next video.